Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to react and break down the brand new DC Studios announcements. So, I was looking at a new article from The Hollywood Reporter. They've already gone over everything that has been announced, and I was briefly scanning over that, but then James Gunn posted to his Twitter a video of which I assume these major trades took all of that information from. So I barely browsed that. This is still very new to me, so I thought instead, initially we'll watch what James Gunn has to say, maybe pause it a couple of times if I have something I really want to say, and then we'll go over it extensively after the video. Very excited. This is a breakdown video primarily, but I thought too many of you would want to see my very adrenaline overdrive reaction to this, because I think a lot of us have been anticipating it. So, let's do this.
Hey everybody, I'm James Gunn. I'm the co-CEO.
By the way, just pausing already, I know some of you are gonna get so mad, but I've been saying they need to do a Nintendo Direct-esque thing. And I'm so happy. Thank you, James Gunn, for doing this. I said you needed to get in front of a camera, show your face, show what you want to do with this world. Not necessarily like to prove yourself to the fans, but regardless, this is something that needed to be done this way. So I'm very happy. Just wanted to start this off there, but let's go.
Of DC Studios. So as many of you know, DC has been disconnected in film and television for a long time. Yeah. It's one of our jobs, mine and Peter's, is to come in and make sure the DCU is connected in film, television, gaming, and animation. That the characters are consistent, played by the same actors, and it works within one story. And if something is outside of that, like Matt Reeves' Batman,
thank you, James, for saying it again.
Or Todd Phillips' Joker, or Teen Titans Go, that it is clearly labeled as DC Elseworlds, outside of the mainstream DCU continuity. Now, Peter and I have gotten pretty lucky in terms of the 4 projects that are coming out over the next year. First, we have Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Yeah. Shazam has always been off kind of in his own part of the DCU, so he connects very well. That moves directly into The Flash, a fantastic movie that I really love, that resets the entire DC universe. Then to move into Blue Beetle, a fantastic film about a kid who's a marvelous part of the DCU, and then into Aquaman 2, which leads directly into our next few projects, which I'm going to tell you about now. So, Peter and I, along with a group of very...
So just to pause there, he was saying, it's like this DCEU is transitioning into the new DCU, and I'm not trying to make that sound like it's revelationary, it's just we didn't know if the Flash movies, ending with the reset and with what Barry does with the timeline truly does, reset it all. But it seems like even though that was a meant to spin off into this new universe with Michael Keaton and a Batman Beyond film down there, they're still going to maybe use that to spin off into this new DC universe. The first movie in that new DCU will be Blue Beetle, so maybe that's been repurposed to be within James Gunn's DCU. And then Aquaman 2 is already within the new DCU, which would make sense, I guess, with Jason Momoa's comments about how he's still going to be Aquaman.
Talented writers have started to map out an 8 to 10 year plan of what DC Studios will be in film, television, and gaming. This first chapter is called Gods and Monsters. Now, this, what I'm about to tell you, is a part of the first chapter. It's not the entire first chapter.
Okay.
The first project is Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos is an animated series. I've written all the episodes. Something we're going to do that's a little bit different at DC is we're going to have characters move into animation, out of animation, usually having the same actor play their voice as who plays them in live action.
I like that.
The next project up is Waller. This is a story of Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. Viola Davis is going to team up with members of Team Peacemaker, and this is a story that's been created by Crystal Henry, who did Watchmen, and Jeremy Carver, who created the Doom Patrol. It is a fantastic story that's out of this world, and I can't wait for people to see it.
Just to pause there, I think Waller leaked a while ago with the plans there, but this just goes to show even more with what the major trades did say and how it is a broad reset, but not a blanket reset. So there are DCEU legacy characters like Viola Davis's Amanda Waller going on in this new first DCU chapter.
Okay, next up is the big one, the true beginning of the DCU.
Okay.
This is called Superman Legacy. This is being written by me. I'm in the middle of it. I'm having a great time doing it. And Superman will be released into theaters July 11th, 2025. Okay, the next thing is a big premiere.
2025. July. very interesting. That's quite fast track. I mean, it can be done. I don't want to say fast tracking in a negative way. It's just like they're getting on that. And James Gunn has been working on this for a little while now. And I guess he's like, right, we're getting into this and we're filming it, post-production and everything. And then boom, 2025 summer, you've got your first new Superman movie.
HBO television series called Lanterns. This is a story of a couple of Green Lanterns, John Stewart and Hal Jordan, and we have a few other lanterns peppered in there, but this is really a terrestrial-based TV show, which is almost like True Detective with a couple of Green Lanterns who are space cops watching over Precinct Earth. In it, they discover a terrifying mystery that ties into our larger story of the DCU. Next is a big movie called The Authority. The Authority is a passion project of mine. It's based on the marvelous Wildstorm characters we are now bringing into the DCU and will interact with all of our primary DCU characters. The Authority are a group of superheroes who think the world is broken and they want to fix it by any means necessary. I think it's a very different look at superheroes. We're doing a television series called Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is the story of Paradise Island, usually known as Themyscira, which is the birthplace of Wonder Woman. It's almost like Game of Thrones with Westeros, but with all of the inhabitants of Paradise Island. The introduction of the DCU's Batman is The Brave and the Bold. The Brave and the Bold is the story of Batman and his actual son, Damian Wayne. This is based on Grant Morrison's great comic book run. Damian Wayne is my favorite Robin. He's a little assassin who Batman tries to get in line, and so this is the story of the two of them and the beginning of sort of the Bat family in the DCU. Okay. Next up.
What's interesting about that is, I swear there's a couple of cuts in there, and we'll go back to the article after this, as I said, but I remember that being posted last night by the people who already knew about this, like the reporters, the journalists, and people were thinking, oh, they might be starting with Dick Grayson as Batman in this universe because of the images used. But James Gunn says here that it is a story about Batman and his son. So this is, as I thought, with regards to this new DC universe, is hitting the ground running. They don't want to like rise up and take their first steps. Maybe with a couple of characters, especially maybe brand new ones. But the thing to bear in mind is we don't need an origin. I suspected Batman would be a ways into his career, not Ben Affleck age or anything like that. However, you know, at least quite adept at what he's been doing, possibly 35 to 38 years old, been Batman since like 26. So like the fact that he's got Damian here, this is very interesting stuff, and honestly going along the way I thought. Now I didn't think it would be Damian though. I thought it would be Dick Grayson, but let's continue.
And the beginning of sort of the Bat family in the DCU.
Awesome.
Next up is a TV
series
called
of the Bat family.
Booster Gold. Booster Gold is one of comics' really popular cult heroes. He is a fascinating guy. He's a loser from the future who uses future technology to come back to present day and become a superhero so that people will love him. It is basically the superhero story of imposter syndrome on an HBO Max series.
Cool.
One of my favorite comic book series.
That got kind of leaked in a way. People thought that Booster Gold was coming.
From last year was Tom King's run on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And so we're going to turn that into a big science fiction epic film.
Okay.
Now, Superman is a guy who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents, whereas Supergirl in this story, she is a character who was raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way. So she's a much more jaded character. And that brings me...
Before we get into what just came on screen, interesting. We could get this new younger Superman film, but we're also getting his cousin Kara, you know, in a film as well. So like truly, like this living, breathing DC universe, as I said, hitting the ground running truly. No origins per se, but like we are breathing. Things have been going on for a minute. We're just like boosting, or should I say jumping into it. And I don't think that'll be a bad thing. Like we're going to be overwhelmed. I think it's better this way. I think we're past origins, even if we're getting somewhat of a new universe. It's just you can kind of relax into it, but you don't have to start from the beginning in a way. So, Swamp Thing.
A Swamp Thing, the last thing we're going to talk about, a very dark horror story in the origins of the monster who is Swamp Thing. Yes. And although it's totally outside of the rest of the DCU, it will still feed into the rest of the stories.
Can't wait, because Swamp Thing is freaking incredible.
Anyway, those are the stories that I can tell you about right now. I've loved the DC characters since I was a child. They're incredibly important to me. I knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something very different. One of the things that's very important for me in all of these movies and TV series is that the director's vision and the vision of the writers and all of the creators is unique and something special. Storytelling is always king. That's all that matters to us. And I want to be true to those stories. I want to be true to you guys and really give you something different than you've ever seen before. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you watching. I hope this was exciting for you because it's really exciting for me. And I can't wait to start to dive into these stories with you guys on this grand adventure. Thank you so much.
That was the ending message as well, basically saying that he's going to keep the visions of these directors and, you know, the storytelling and how important that is, the unique aspects of it. That's something he said as he came in with Peter Safran on the Warner Brothers Discovery website. They've got that press release there. And you could have said like it was fluff, but he was going on about maintaining creative vision. And that's a great way to end it off. And that is all I wanted. Honestly, the video is, I said it wouldn't require too much effort, right? And that doesn't. He's in front of like a green screen or something. They've got some concept art. It was like, what, how long was that? Like barely 10 minutes or whatever. It was the one thing I wanted them to do, I felt like they had to do to like just make it, build some rapport with the fans of this new leadership with DC Studios, and they did it. Before we dive very specifically into those projects, there's a couple of other bits of news. So the Batman 2, as we already know, and James Gunn has made explicitly clear, I hope we can finally put that freaking rumor to rest, even though he did that on Twitter saying entirely untrue. It's been alive and people have still been wondering about it. But the Batman Chapter 2, or should I say Part 2, is under the Elseworlds flag, like literally alongside Joker and future projects. The Hollywood Reporter go on to say here, though the duo are working in one DC universe, some stories will stand apart. Reeves' Batman movies and Todd Phillips' sequel will fall under a banner titled DC Elseworlds, which will, just as in the comics, fall outside the larger continuity of the DCU. Also important to note here, the Black Superman project, being written by Ta-Nehisi Coates under the previous regime, remains in active development and would also fall under that category. They went on to say that the bar is going to be very high for projects to be outside the DCU. The Elseworld projects, explained Safran. But every now and then, there will be something that lives up to that. So, for the large part, as with what we've heard with all of these brand new projects, you know, a new DCU Batman with Damian Wayne, new Superman, Supergirl, and everything like that, that's all going to be connected also across TV shows, animation, as James Gunn said, even voice actors for the animation will be popping in as on screen in live action as those roles as well. But you will have a very high bar for certain projects like Matt Reeves' The Batman to be outside under this DC Elseworlds label. Now, Batman is already in that category, I think, because, you know, the first movie, to most people, was very, very good. Joker is in its own caliber as well, very successful, $1 billion+ movie. So as a result, they've already been going, they've already been cooking as well, so they will continue. And The Batman, which is apparently titled The Batman Part 2, will be releasing, supposedly, October 3rd, 2025. So the 2025 release date that we've been talking about for quite a while turned out to be true. I always thought that the fall of 2024 we'd be very, 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 very lucky. So I was thinking 2025. I was thinking maybe spring or so, maybe by summer, but no, apparently by October 2025. So we've still got quite the road ahead of us. But I'm dying to get back into the slate that James Gunn said. That is not all of the slate, but, you know, a large chunk of it. So one of the biggest intriguing things to me is that we had some discussion about the DC EU movies that still have yet to come out. Now, he made it pretty obvious that the Flash movie will reset and more or less change everything. Now, that was always the case with the Flash movie, and it was going to spin off into Batgirl, Keaton carrying on, etc., etc., but it's like they've repurposed that, and it seems as though that Blue Beetle, played by Xolo Maridueña, is the first part, technically speaking, of the DCU. James Gunn even said he's a marvelous part of the DCU, and that Aquaman 2 that comes after that will lead directly, apparently, into the events of the Chapter 1 slate of the DCU that got announced in this video from James Gunn. Now, the Hollywood Reporter also go on to say, after talking about Shazam! Fury of the Gods, The Flash, Blue Beetle, Aquaman, and Lost Kingdom, that the 4 leads of those films could potentially continue playing their leading roles in the DCU projects down the line. There is nothing that prohibits that from happening, said Gunn. So that's what I assume maybe Zachary Levi heard with regards to him saying, even way before this announcement, that I wouldn't believe everything you read on the internet, I'm all Gucci. So I guess he got some reassurances, and he's friends with Peter Safran and whatnot, that he will still be Billy Batson in this new DCU. And after all, that kind of makes sense to me. Maybe some will be cherry-picked because, for example, we don't have Henry Cavill. Blame this kind of all in-story and in-universe-wise on The Flash, so some things will stay the same, but after Barry corrects the timeline in that movie, or tries to correct it, it's the whole analogy of what we got in the CW show. After you break a coffee cup and you put it back together, it can be put back together, but there'll still be the cracks in it. So some things are the same, but some things are different. So new Superman, no longer Henry Cavill, but we've still got Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, and now we're getting a Waller series. So that's the kind of vibe. So I would maybe expect to see some of the larger DC roles of the DCEU also continue on, maybe with Zachary Levi's Shazam, maybe even Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Like, these are all kind of roles we actually haven't got any clarification on yet, but the bottom line here is that it's true. This is a broad reset, but not a blanket one. We haven't ripped off the tablecloth and put on a whole new one. We've just modified the existing one, but it will feel pretty damn new. And when it came to Ezra Miller, they still played pretty coy on answering that. So again, just like Henry Cavill, not that there was any controversy surrounding Cavill, but not every actor is guaranteed. So they go on to talk about how Ezra is completely committed to their recovery, and they're very supportive of that. And when the time is right, when they are ready to have that discussion, we will figure out what is the best path forward. But that still remains to be seen. A lot of people, and I think this is relevant speculation, is, well, still given everything, and still given that Andy Muschietti's movie, despite Ezra Miller drama, aside and everything, is apparently a very good product. So even if they weren't keeping Ezra on, they wouldn't say that until that movie has released. At least sometime after that. But having said that, I'm not saying it's impossible for Ezra to be recast, but given that the Flash movie is the reason that changes this universe as we now know into the next stage, Blue Beetle being the first, Aquaman 2, and then the new slate of titles we heard about today. Well, it was Ezra's Barry who did that, so unless at the end of the existing Flash movie that Barry's own changes his own face, then technically all signs point towards the Ezra Miller version of Barry Allen still being the same Ezra Miller Barry Allen that even changed this universe to make it become this new DCU continuity with all of these new titles. I hope you're still with me there. Yes, I know if they wanted to, they could still completely change things behind the scenes and cast a new actor. But just logistically, this Ezra Miller Barry Allen's the one who's technically changing the state and fabric of the universe to get to this new Batman and Damian Wayne, new Superman and Supergirl. But yeah, it looks like Peacemaker's in the new DCU. I thought that would be the case anyway. Still got Viola Davis's Amanda Waller. Momoa's Aquaman is still Aquaman. That seems to be true with everything we've heard from Momoa as well. But just looking at the Hollywood Reporter's article here, just going over all of these new slated projects, I really like the look of them. And obviously we need to wait to see what some of these are like. We've got Creature Commandos. That looks very interesting. The fact that it's going from animated and into live action, vice versa there. Is that Weasel in the corner as well? I swear it is, from the Suicide Squad. That's going to be super, super interesting. Obviously, Waller, as we already know, set between Peacemaker Season 1 and 2. I love that it's got Jeremy Carver attached to it as well, because he's the creator and the showrunner of the Doom Patrol series. So that should say that all. Superman Legacy, as we've already been over a bunch, very intrigued about that. Again, we get some extra comments here and how it's apparently not an origin story, as we already know. It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth and justice in the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks that kindness is old-fashioned. A release date of July 11th, 2025 has been penciled in. Very intrigued about that. I know people are obviously gutted about Henry Cavill, but regardless, in this new DC universe that's been changed by The Flash, it's going to be certainly fascinating to see what adventure this will be for a younger year Superman. And how old is he? Is he like late 20s or mid 20s? That would be pretty insane if he's like 24, 25 years old. I don't think he'll be that young, because I still think a young Superman could be like 27 to 29. Then we've got Lanterns, as we've kind of already been over. It seems like a repurposed version of, as the Hollywood Reporter says here, Greg Berlanti's long in the works Green Lantern TV series has been scrapped, and the duo have parted ways with a longtime DC series steward. In its place will be a new take on the space cops with power rings. Our vision for this is very much in the vein of True Detective, Safran described. It's terrestrial based, it will feature prominent Lantern heroes Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, and is one of the most important shows they have in development, which is very intriguing that they regard it as one of the most important shows they have in development. Obviously, this is connected to the DCU, so the fact that we're going from this series and into live action movie roles, the Lanterns are huge DC characters, so that's probably why it's one of the most important shows they have in development, because they want this to kick off and breathe back and forth as the years unfold in this new DCU and as the chapters unfold as well. And they leave it off by saying this plays a really big role in leading into the main story we are telling across film and TV. So obviously each movie, each project will have its own little story. Superman's gonna be doing his thing, Batman and Damian Wayne, but there's still gonna be like the overall DCU plot, like who's the big bad behind all of it. And I wonder if the fact that they say it plays a really important role, the Lanterns here, and leads into the main story they're telling across both film and TV. Maybe Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart stumble across something in this show that could be the first teasers for like the threat that could haunt the DCU characters for the next 8 to 10 years. Now, the Authority, that most certainly piques my interest here, because they're saying it's a movie based on a team of superheroes with rather extreme methods of protecting the planet that first originated in the late 1990s under an influential imprint known as Wildstorm, run by artist and now head of DC Publishing, Jim Lee. Now, this is likely going to be a bloody series. You know, James Gunn likes stuff like that. Look at what he kind of did with the Suicide Squad. That went, you know, as far as it could go, with also wanting to kind of keep it down a little bit. But this gives like a sense of almost The Boys, but the Authority. So seeing in the DCU canonical continuity when you've got all these other characters going on, maybe people who take it to the next level and will do anything by any means necessary to protect. So that sounds very cool, and I'd like to think it could be very The Boys inspired and bloody, because, you know, the fact that we're getting Swamp Thing and that's a horror movie, I'd like to think they are going to keep some things R-rated, even if it's still connected canonically to some of the other projects like Superman or Batman. With obviously those projects likely not ever going to be R-rated, but some could be, and the Authority is something that very intrigues me, because they say not every film and TV show is going to be about the good guy versus the bad guy. Giant things from the sky comes and good guy wins. There are white hats, black hats, and gray hats, added Safran. They are kind of like Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. They know that you want them on the wall, or at least they believe that. Now, Paradise Lost, The Hollywood Reporter, that the idea intrigues me, especially the way James Gunn described it. The duo described the HBO Max series as Game of Thrones style drama set out on the all-female island that is Wonder Woman's birthplace, Themyscira, filled with political intrigue and scheming between power players. It takes place before the events of the Wonder Woman film. So I guess if this is going way back, maybe in a House of the Dragon kind of sense with regards to before the Wonder Woman movie starring Gal Gadot, then Gal Gadot could still be Wonder Woman. I mean, of course, it could be a recast Henry Cavill style, even though you still have Viola Davis as Amanda Waller and whatnot. But that still remains to be seen. And as James Gunn said, and as we briefly went over, it's not entirely out of the question for the lead roles of Shazam, Fear of the Gods, you know, Blue Beetle, Aquaman, etc. to carry on. But again, we still need that clarity with some actors. Now, the brave and the bold. That is very intriguing. It's not a hate say I told you so moment. It's just, I've been saying this whole time that Reeves' Batman, the writing's been on the wall as well, because it's been said to us before that we'll be separate. And I've been saying, and I've been looking forward to this other iteration of Batman as well, because in the DCU, they can really embrace the fantastical more than Matt Reeves ever would. So, that being said, I've always envisioned and been theorizing about recently a Batman who is maybe in his early to mid 30s and has been Batman for at least 7 to 8 years. And the fact that here we have James Gunn saying this is the introduction of the DCU Batman, of Bruce Wayne, and also introduces our favorite Robin, Damian Wayne, debatable, who is the little son of a, YouTube monetization and all that. The movie will take inspiration from the now classic Batman run written by Grant Morrison that introduced Batman to a son he never knew existed, a murderous tween raised by assassins. It's a very strange father and son story. Now, again, Matt Reeves met with James Gunn sometime this month, and Matt Reeves described it as air traffic control. They obviously don't want their Batman planes crashing into each other, so obviously they discussed ideas. Now, I have to think that Robin was a part of that conversation. Now, technically, this doesn't eliminate Robin from the Batman movies. It could be that Matt Reeves has dibs on Dick Grayson, and that's why you have in the DCU Batman with the Damian Wayne story. Now, that being said, I know some people are going to say, and I partially believe this as well, well, granted they are doing two Batman. You're going to have Pattinson over there, the DCU Batman over here with Damian Wayne, but would they really do two Batman and Robins? Good point. That's the thing. Maybe Reeves' trilogy won't have Robin at all. Maybe he will. And the fact that it's another Robin, Dick Grayson, that will be fine. But I've always been hesitant, and we've talked about this for a long time in the discussion series Batman videos on the channel. Will they introduce Robin? If they do him at all, it can't be in the second film other than maybe introducing him right at the end, as in Fade to Black style introducing for the third movie. But even then, I've been hesitant about it. So the fact that we're having Batman and Robin, granted it's not Dick Grayson in the DCU, might be the only version of Robin we're getting because Reeves might not be able to get Robin. Ultimately, we don't know because the Batman Part 2 is still yet to come out in 2025. Then we're getting another movie. It's always been a planned trilogy. Robin could get teased in that. He could even appear in that, or at the very end. At the end of the trilogy, it gets teased that Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne is going to adopt Dick Grayson, but we kind of never see it, but at least it's in our minds for where that character goes, unless Pattinson's Batman dies at the end of the trilogy, but I don't think they're going to do that. But you get my idea. So at first I was like, okay, very excited for this, but I kind of want, Dick Grayson to be the Robin of any Batman in the DCU, but at the same time, this is where all of the unknown comes in. Maybe we're getting Dick Grayson and Reeves's trilogy. If we're not, though, and the only Robin we're going to see with a Batman is Damian Wayne in the DCU, and with that DCU Batman, then yeah, a little part of me is kind of like, I wish it was Dick Grayson. But the cool thing about this, by the way, is that Gunn says it's like the proper start to the Bat family. So this Bruce Wayne could have already had Dick Grayson trained and he's in Nightwing mode. We might not even see Dick Grayson in Robin mode because he's already, graduated that and he's actually a Titan. I love that we're getting a Booster Gold TV series, or should I say HBO Max series, the way it's described, just about a loser from the future who uses basic future technology to come back to today and pretend to be a superhero, described as an imposter syndrome as a superhero. I think that's going to be really decent. I mean, I love the premise of it, and I think that will be fun. We've already had a flavor of fun with Peacemaker, and I think that could be maybe brought about with Booster Gold a little bit, but maybe not that level of comedy, but we'll have to wait and see. Then the Supergirl movie, very, very, very intrigued by that. I didn't expect, on top of Superman being introduced in the canon of the DCU, and as James Gunn says, Superman Legacy is technically the true start of his new DCU. We're getting his cousin. So as it's described here, we will see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he was an infant, versus Supergirl, raised on a rock, got a ship off of Krypton, and who watched everyone around her died and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life and then come to Earth. She is much more hardcore and not the Supergirl we're used to. I love that. I do love that, because no matter what, Superman does have a relevant story in, learning about his heritage. He loves humanity because he was raised yes, he's an alien, but he was raised as a human. He loves humanity because he has been a part of it since he was basically born, right? But Kara is so interesting, and more interesting arguably in this avenue, because she's already lived like 14 years of her life, and then she comes to a place and doesn't have that relationship with it that Clark does. So I think this has a lot of potential. And lastly, Swamp Thing. I don't even need to say too much about this, even though it's arguably one of the more hyped things for me. with these announcements. A cinematic level Swamp Thing movie that's a horror film, I feel like can do so much. I loved what DC Universe did with Swamp Thing. That was just unjustly cancelled. It had nothing to do with views or anything like that. It was behind the scenes, taxi kind of weird reasons. But it had great production design, and the fact that we could get like a cinematic level version of that, getting into Abby Arcane, Anton Arcane, the Justice League dark side of things, but it's horror-y. There's so much potential. So much potential. Anyway, though, guys, I'm going to leave this video here. I know I've done a lot of rambling, but this is more or less my reaction breakdown to everything. I've more or less made this video from the start of learning these projects, and here I am. Do subscribe to the channel for more specific deep dives into these projects, what we can expect, some theory, speculation, Q&A kind of answering as well, getting you guys involved, because again, with as much clarity as what we've got with these projects, there is so many questions now to ask. I'm really looking forward to, you know, the fact we're getting a new Batman. Who could the new Batman be? We can start getting into fan casts and everything like that for the DCU Batman. Who should be Damian Wayne? What's going on with Dick Grayson? Has he even been in that universe, or is he still yet to come? Who knows? There are so many things to consider, so let me know your thoughts on this slate down in the comments below. Do you like it? Do you think it's like, okay, there's some things I like more than other things? Or do you absolutely hate this? But if you do, like genuinely, let me know why. Let me know why you really don't like it. Like the video, would really appreciate that. Thanks for watching for as long as you have. If you've got to this part in the video, do go and prove it, actually. Sometimes we do this on the channel. With whatever comment you're going to post down in the comments below. Hashtag Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters. But until next time, guys, we'll be looking out for those comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the new DCU in the next video. Goodbye.